Hello and how's it? I'm Norman Raad, the CEO of Broll Auctions and Sales, and this is the Broll Broadcast. If you've ever wondered how REIT empires are actually built, not on paper, but in the real market, today we're speaking to someone who's done it multiple times. Our guest today is one of the architects of modern listed property in South Africa, a chartered accountant who didn't stay in accounting, a deal maker who helped shape REIT markets across the continents, and a founder who's built, listed, sold, and rebuilt property funds through the booms, crashes, and reinvention. From the early days of commercial brokerage to founding Spearhead, to mega mergers at Redefine, to launching Spear REIT, and managing global property capital from Europe. Mike Flax has spent nearly 4 decades at the intersection of property, capital, and strategy. Today, we're not just talking about deals. We're talking about cycles, discipline, and risk, and what it takes to build something that lasts in this volatile world. Welcome, Mike. It's great to have you here on the broadcast and our show at Broll Auctions and Sales, and thank you for taking the time. I know you're up here for the REIT conference, and to grab an hour of your time, really, I know it's precious time, but thank you very much for spending this with us and for sharing a bit of the history, a bit about you. And as we explained, is what it's all about. Our show is just to talk about and share your story. You know, it's people or know the infamous Mike Flax, but not everyone really knows and has spent time talking or listening to you. You know, we all know what you've done. And we go back a long way. I think I met you obviously through property, but we've become friends over the years, and we've done some stuff together, sold some properties and some assets to the funds. And it's been an incredible journey. I've watched it. You've been actually one of my heroes in the industry and one of my icons. Would love to follow in your footsteps. My journey's taken a little bit of a different involvement, but you know, watching you from the sidelines, and I think everyone that's involved in this industry, your name stands out amongst many others. And it's wonderful to have you and just to talk a bit about that journey. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Normie. It's great to be on your broadcast. I look forward to it.
Okay, so good. So why don't we start off, from the very beginning? Yeah, you qualified as an accountant. I think that's what you were. And you talk about accountants, particularly you're very calm and composed person. I think all accountants are like that, but you had something special. And what made you get into property, and how did it all first start?
Well, the reality was I was bored as doing accounting and auditing. It was killing my spirit. And I think either you're made for that kind of stuff or you're not. And it was a fantastic grounding for me, you know, to learn how to be analytical and to learn to understand the numbers. But I realized very soon into my auditing career of my articles that I had to get into marketing and sales. So there were a couple of options for me. And I had some cousins in the property industry, the Chiefs. I thought, well, come, let's join them. And so that's how I started. I got out of my accounting articles as soon as I qualified as a CA. And I joined as a commission agent. And nothing makes you hungrier or makes you learn quicker than if you're not getting a basic salary and you're on pure commission. So I started as an investment broker, and I was thrown into the deep end.
That's something that I actually didn't even know. I didn't know that you were like a commission agent in the beginning with Steve, and but that actually must have set, you know, the foundation of you understanding property. No one's going to do it better unless you become an agent and you're dealing with buyers and sellers and understanding how the whole process works. But then eventually it went through. You changed from an agent and you decided to buy your first property.
Yeah, I'll take you through that. As I say, being an agent is a great place to learn the game. You're out there, you're seeing landlords, you're meeting potential investors and buyers, you're seeing the property, you're interviewing tenants. So yeah, it's a great place to learn the game. I'm not saying that's not a good place to learn the game as a property manager or something else, but being an agent really sticks you right into the heart of it. So I was plodding along as an investment property guy, and during my articles, I actually looked after the board of executives as a client, and they were very big in the property syndication industry at the time. It was there wasn't much of a listed property sector in South Africa. It was tiny. There were 3 listings, But there were a lot of properties, unlisted property syndications. So Board of Executors, which is now part of Nedbank, were very big. And then there was Metboard, that was kind of part of Investec, that was also a very big player in that industry. And, it was interesting. So when I started as an investment broker, I thought, why the hell can't I do this as well? Sure, you're going to take on the big names. But I was a CEO, I had some kind of credibility. So we bought our first property with the intention to syndicate it. And that was the Bears building in Wynberg in Cape Town. I remember it cost us about 2.5 million rand. But we didn't have the money for it, obviously, to buy it.
Who's we?
So I was part of the SEEF group, and I'd started a little offshoot called SEEF Trust, which was like an investment property part of the business. I owned 50% of that company. And said, let's buy it. So we bought it kind of on these kind of long options, where
Gut feel.
You put a little bit of a deposit down, and you have all these conditions precedent, that allows you to string the seller along for a while. So during that period, as soon as we got the property under control, developed a brochure, broke it up into 10,000 Rand units, obviously marked it up by, let's say, 20% on the gross price. So let's say you buy it at a 12% yield, you start syndicating it at a 10% yield to investors, and you got to work the phones and advertise and find investors. And we did that, we managed to actually basically underwrite the property during the 3-month kind of option period, the conditions precedent period, raised the money, had it all in trust account, and came the end of that the condition precedent period, we told the seller, yeah, we're good. We've got the money. We're buying it. Bought it, let's say, for the 2.5 million, took in 3 million. The 500,000 was there, that was, covering expenses and a bit of profit, and paid commission to the agents that I had working with me. And that was the start of a great new business, property syndication, competing with Metboard and Board of Executors. And from there, we just built it up into a massive engine. I got a lot of my old mates out of the accounting profession in as salesmen who were keen to earn and earn a lot of money. And within no time at all, I'd built a whole sales network. And we were doing, well, at the end of the day, over R1 billion worth of this stuff.
Were those investors they just people that you advertise to? You're not only friends and family?
So generally was people we advertised. So I remember kind of a genius move. We took the bottom right-hand corner of the Sunday Times, either the Sunday Times or the Sunday Business Times, and that was the biggest newspaper in the country by far. And we'd have a little coupon and a direct phone number in there. And essentially we were attracting the kind of guys who were going into pension, or doctors and professionals who wanted to invest in property. And because I said there were very limited opportunities on the listed side at the time. So 10,000 Rand units, and they were phoning in, and sure, we were taking their capital. And at the time, it was very unregulated, the industry. There was the prospectus. We were obviously selling shares in a public company, shares and debentures in a public company. So we had to comply with the Companies Act. But there was very little in terms of control.
And tell me, obviously it was good for you because you were covering expenses through the margin that you were making, and for the team and the who put it together. But there must have been some. When did you know that it was working for the investors? Did it happen straight away? Did it take time? Because that must have been around the early 2000s.
Yeah, 1999, we did our first one in the year 2000.
And property was tough at that moment. We had interest rate hikes.
Sorry, it was 1989. No, sorry, it was the 1990s. Okay. So the heyday of our story was 1990s. Yeah.
Okay, and how did it? That it was working out for?
Well, we would pay quarterly returns, and how it was working out, because we were in the main delivering returns pretty similar to what we originally advertised. So we were growing the income, but sometimes it wasn't easy, because sometimes you had a single let property, and if at the end of the lease came and the tenant left, well, then you had no income. And it was quite tricky, running single syndications, because there was no cross-subsidization. Each had to stand on its own 2 feet. And occasionally you never met expectations. But we developed a resale market. We had at the end of the day, we had 8,500 investors. And we had over R1 billion worth of investment into our different syndications that we were managing on an ongoing basis. But we also developed a resale market, an over-the-counter market, so people wanted to sell their shares.
Okay.
You know, and in the main, I got to say, we rode a nice growth cycle in the property market through the 90s.
And tell me, everyone talks, everyone hears about the successful stories and how everyone did well, and you guys certainly did well, the investors and certainly yourself. But there must have been some really challenging times that you went through. I mean, you talk us through those times, because I think people are more interested in to understand that.
Yeah. So 1999, interest rates went to 25% in South Africa.
I remember that.
And property became a swear word all of a sudden. I mean, you know, it was like a dog investment. Who the hell would want to invest in property? And suddenly we had a problem. You know, we couldn't do new syndications. And also our over-the-counter resales dried up. So investors were starting to get a bit irate, you know. Sure, they were still getting a return on their investments, but those who wanted out couldn't get out. And at the same time, the SEEF Group had listed in the financial services sector. I put my company in, and we were bought out within quite a quick period. Within a year, we were bought out by Capital Alliance Group, and they decided to spin off a little financial services company called BREIT under Mark Barnes, who ended up being the CEO of the post office, amongst many other things.
And he's involved in Purple Capital.
Correct. So he was running BREIT, and BREIT had futures business, it had asset management, private equity, property, and came 1999, interest rates, and in fact, they bought us in about 96, came 99, interest rates at 25%. The few listed property companies that were on the stock exchange were trading on 40, 50% yields. You couldn't give property away. And they said, hey, guys, we want out of property. We want to sell you back the old SEEF Group. You can have it back at a really good price. And I had the opportunity to buy back my old SEEF Trust. But according to BREIT, they said, listen, you can take it at a good price, but you need to buy all of our commercial properties as well. They had built their own portfolio of commercial properties. So now I had this dilemma. I had all these underperforming syndications, 8,500 irate investors who couldn't sell. I could buy this business back. I owned a few commercial properties myself. I thought, how the bloody hell am I going to put this thing together? And kind of a brainwave came along. I said, let me throw everything into one big pot. These 70-odd syndications that we'd done, the 2 or 3 commercial properties I had, the 3 or 4 BREIT commercial properties that they owned, plus the management company that I was buying back. And I said, let me throw this all into one pot and I'll list it. And the beauty was most of these syndications weren't geared. There was no debt on them. So I went around and got my team together trying to put this thing together. No one wanted to really, none of the corporate finance guys wanted to get involved, because property, as I said, was a dirty word. They didn't want to help us. The banks I went to, I was looking to get 50% gearing against all the properties. Nobody wanted to touch us. Nobody was interested, other than Absa Bank. And Absa made us an offer. They would give us a loan of 50% of the NAV of the properties. And with that money, I could then use some of it to give cash back to all the investors and pay out BREIT and get this whole listing together. And I warned the investors that, listen, we would have to list at net asset value, which was 10 Rand. But because listed companies were trading at half their NAV or worse, the share price would fall on listing. But we ended up having 70 meetings with the different syndication companies. Each one was their own little public company. We convinced all of them to vote in favor. We needed 75% vote from all shareholders. It was quite a story. I had a good team, and all incentivized to get this listing together. And against all odds, we managed to get this listing together. Managed to pay out BREIT in the main. Buy the company. I ended up with a nice little stake in Spearhead, which the name that we called it, because I own the Manco, which we sold in for, let's say, 7-8% of the total company, and also had a bit of cash. So come listing date, the share price falls to 4.50 in 2000. I created liquidity. I had some cash, and I bought anyone who wanted out, and I built up a nice stake in the company. In fact, I got Jonathan Bed and his group to join me at the time and put up a nice credit line that we could just keep on buying. And we picked up. In fact, Braid had a bit of shareholding. They sold to us. We built up a nice stake in Spearhead, and and then we actually had a bloody good run. Interest rates came down, and we performed unbelievably well. We were the best performer in the listed sector, growing our net income by 15-20% every year as interest rates dropped. For 5 years we had this most amazing company called Spearhead, and it was pretty much a Western Cape focused fund.
Okay, so and you talk about your team. I mean, that team that you had there, are some of them still around with you today?
Yeah, still got some of the old players, and some of them, my old FD since retired, he's now on the board of Spear. Some of them have gone on to do some great things. I mean, in their own right, in fact, a lot of the old team have listed their own companies and made their own billions along the way.
And some of those that we not aware of that started with you in the very, very beginning.
I don't know if you remember Michael Mendelevis and Jonathan Dorner, who got Transaction Capital going.
Yes, unbelievable.
They were my top
business
brokers.
People, unbelievable business people.
Yeah. Jeff Zeman, who helped me a hell of a lot. He's now in Australia, runs a big subsidiary of a big US credit fund. Some really top property people. Yeah, and
when did you and Abu get together? Abu Varachi get together.
So Abu was my QS. Abu, who's now chairman of Spear, was my QS, and we gave him most of our work on our development stuff, and he bought into Spearhead. It was a kind of BE deal we put together, and he led that BE deal, and he got onto the board, and we became good friends, and he became a solid investor.
Not a good golfer.
No, shit golfer. Sorry, but
he loves golf.
He loves his golf and can sometimes really perform extremely well off his 17 or 18 handicap.
An amazing guy. And then so you took that, and eventually you decided maybe that you were small in the bigger scheme of things amongst the listed funds, and then you kind of sold, I think.
What happened was we were very happy going our own way, and then Mark Wayner flew down to Cape Town. Said, "I got to see you." So
they were on the hunt. They were on the hunt to grow.
So he was running a little unlisted property fund manager called Madison with Wolfie Sessman that came out of the Corp Capital stable, and he was running a whole bunch of listed property companies. In fact, they probably half the industry they were running: Redefine, Apex, Hyprop, Prima, you name. There were a whole bunch of them. And he wanted to list this property fund manager called Madison. But he also wanted to grow Redefine. So he came down and he said, "Listen, got a deal for you. We want to buy Redefine, wants to buy Spearhead." And I thought, no, it's my baby. I can't sell this thing. But he said, on top of that, I want you to join me and Wolfie in the listing of Madison. We're two old farts, and the market's not really going to give us much of a rating because they see us as a bit too old. They were really probably in their 60s, which is where I am now. But and he said we need a new face, a young face, as kind of part of the leadership team. So we would be like the co-CEOs of this Madison. I will give you a chunk of equity. Come join us. But we also want you to sell Spearhead. And so the first negotiation was we had to get a good price for Spearhead, and we got we ended up with a fixed ratio. They would give us 6 Redefine shares per Spearhead share. And at the time, Redefine was maybe 2-3 rand a share. But we locked that deal in. And by the time the deal was done, Redefine share price had run. And it valued a Spearhead share at 45 rand by the time the deal.
What was it?
It was 4 rand. It was 4.50 in 2000. In 2005, when the deal was done, it worked out at 45 rand, which was 10x what we would have bought in the year 2000 into Spearhead. So the investors were absolutely jubilant. They thought it was an amazing deal for them. Listen, people said, well, maybe you were coerced into this deal because they were offering you a chunk of equity in Madison. That obviously was a sweetener from my personal point of view, but it actually ended up being an amazing deal for
everyone,
for everybody. All those guys who'd been early syndication investors in the 1990s suddenly got out at a 45 rand a share
That makes sense why they roll out the red carpet wherever you are in Cape Town. I mean, some of those people are most probably past investors.
Amazing thing was we probably had 95% of the original investors had stuck it out. It hadn't sold, had stuck it out and ended up with Redefine shares. Unfortunately, Redefine at the time was about 10, 11 Rand. It obviously went backwards with most of the listed stocks, later on from 2016 and COVID. But everyone did pretty well. So, and I ended up running this new fund manager called Madison, and it was suddenly had a valuation. This company of $2.5 billion, it had 10 employees. It was ridiculous.
And it was just an asset management company.
Just an asset management. I said to Mark and Wolfie, I mean, this is unsustainable, guys. I mean, the market's going to see through this eventually. So what my next strategy was, I said, no, listen, we got to merge Madison into Redefine. Let's do another mega merger in Redefine. And let's sell Madison in. And they weren't that keen initially, but eventually convinced them that it was unsustainable, this kind of valuation of Madison.
I think there was a bit of pressure coming as well, if I remember. There was a bit of people were questioning the valuation of Madison.
So there's some of the institutional shareholders in companies like Hyprop were saying, we don't really have it. We have got a 1-year contract with Madison. We've got to cut those fees and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of pushed the deal. In fact, shareholders in Hyprop decided they weren't going to merge into Redefine. So we actually did a fantastic deal with Atfund. We brought in Atfund into the Hyprop and made it a bigger vehicle. And as Madison, we took 125 million rand fee from that deal. Crazy,
Crazy.
Yeah.
I think those days are gone. You've been watched now like a hawk, and there are a lot more listed funds and a lot more eyes over the sector.
Yeah.
But then, how was it working with Mark? I mean, Mark and Wolfie are icons were in the industry. I mean, they were the leaders of the industry I think Wolfie came out of Liberty, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And I mean, me certainly, I was happy that you arrived on the scene. You're younger, you played golf, you're easy to get hold of. But Mark was a deal maker. They were deal makers. I mean, how was it working with them?
No, listen, it was eye-opening. It was I learned a hell of a lot. I was closer to Mark, and we worked closely together on the kind of deals. Great. I mean, the only thing with Mark he could be a lone wolf, and you could be negotiating and working alongside him on the deal. I'd head back to Cape Town because I never moved to Joburg, where the head office. I'd fly back to Cape Town on the Thursday, and then I'd pick up the business times on the Monday.
He'd made a decision.
Yeah, I see. He'd done the deal. He hadn't consulted me, but it didn't matter because Mark actually he never made bad decisions. He made great deals, and I learned a hell of a lot. I mean, he was a guy of his word. If he said, if he agreed the deal, whatever he agreed verbally was the kind of deal that he did. And he kind of looked after after the brokers and the players in the industry. He tried to be fair, and but he was a kind of guy that could do the numbers in his head, or what he liked to say in the back of his cigarette box.
Yeah.
So for an untrained guy, I mean, I don't think he had any.
He literally worked in the back of a little box.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd sit behind his desk and he would run some numbers, and you'd say, "This is the deal."
Yeah, and he could work it. It was all sitting in his head. It was really quite impressive for a guy that wasn't an accountant.
And he came from very humble beginnings, also doing little deals, running a little brokerage, and he became one of the icons in the industry.
No, he was, yeah.
And then your decision to leave them.
So, I did, I originally signed up with a 5-year employment agreement when I joined Madison, and that was spun into Redefine. And I was there through the boardroom battle where there was a proper breakup of the Mark and Wolfie relationship, which was quite fascinating to watch. I was on Mark's side, and Wolfie kind of said, he wanted Flax and Wayne at the business, and he wanted to be the sole CEO, or he's resigning. And he thought he had the board under control, and he didn't. And the board said, thanks, we'll accept your resignation. And I was with Mark, and then Mark was the sole CEO. But within a while, he decided, no, listen, he wanted to be chairman, and he wanted me to take over as CEO. Andrew Koenig had been recruited since at the time, and he was our FD. But the problem was, I was traveling like crazy, man. I was in Johannesburg for 2 weeks of the month. I was in Australia because we had a big holding in Cromwell, and I was on the board there, and I was on the board of Redefine International in London. So I was probably in London once a month. And I had a young family in Cape Town, and I'd done very well financially out of the original sale of Spearhead. and my stake in Madison, and they wanted me to take over CEO of Redefine in 2010. And I thought to myself, no, this is actually not what I really need in life. I need some balance. My kids were growing up. I wasn't there. I was traveling like crazy. It wasn't healthy. I said, guys, not only am I not actually taking over as CEO, I'm actually resigning as an exec. I'll stay on the board, but I just need balance. And obviously a disappointment from Mark's side, but we had Andrew, capable guy who could step up.
And a very, very likable, good guy.
Yeah, sure. He didn't come out of the property industry, but he's since learned a hell of a lot about it and done very nicely with Redefine. So, so I went back to Cape Town, and Mark said, listen, when you leave, just take all the non-core crap with you, please. Buy it out of Redefine. I want to clean up Redefine. So I said, it's fine, as long as I can choose. And at the same time, I'll take, let's say, a hotel and a retirement business and some land and stuff that was in there. And I said, but I also want to be able to choose maybe 10 commercial and industrial retail properties that are in the Cape Town area that are kind of smallish. I said, okay, you can do that. And I got some vendor funding from Redefine, and I got some debt funding, and I had a bit of equity. And I called up my old mate Abu, and I said, come, let's put a little private fund together, And I spoke to Mark. I said, can we get part of the old Spearhead name back? I want to use it was a lucky business for us, I want to use I want the word Spear. He said, because you don't use it anymore, it was now part of Redefine. I said, no problem. So we bought a little portfolio. Abu put cash in, I put cash in, and I went to another old friend who was a really good broker, old Quentin Rossi, youngster. I said, come join us. We'll have a little private fund. We're not going to list this thing, but we'll have a lot of fun, and we'll give you equity, sweat equity. You do all the work, and the Muslim and the Jew will put the money in. And that's what happened. And we started Spear and in Cape Town. We said it would just be a regional play again, like Spearhead was. And was it private, or did you list it straight away? It was private, and we said we won't list it because it's too much hassle. And anyway, within a while, we started growing this little business called Spear. We did deals together at the time, and then the Redefine board said, no, this is a bit of a conflict of interest. I think you're going to have to step down off the Redefine board because, you guys you're a bit of a player now. And so I stepped off the Redefine board, and we started building Spear as a little unlisted company and doing a bit of this, a bit of development, a bit of this, a bit of that in the Cape Town area.
But you must have learned a lot with Mark and Wolfie and being in the listed sector and in that kind of size of the mistakes that they made and the acquisitions or sales that they possibly did that didn't work out. And you were well placed now to do something for yourself.
Yeah, so we were nicely placed. We owned 100% of the equity. But then what was happening was South Africa was, and I was part of it actually, was working on developing REIT legislation, which is really an amazing piece of legislation that is very tax efficient actually, because it gets rid of all kinds of tax leakage in a property company. A REIT basically doesn't pay tax. It acts as a conduit pipe, but you get to whatever you pay out to shareholders is like a tax deduction. So I was part of that team that kind of got the REIT legislation in, and it was just so attractive, that legislation that we thought, we're going to have to list as a REIT, Spear, just to get that. And we'll keep it small. We won't need institutional shareholders, but we'll get the benefits of being a REIT. You don't pay capital gains tax if you trade your properties in your portfolio. That was a big benefit actually, because the CGT was just building up. If you're subject to CGT, you don't want to sell your assets because of the bloody tax you're going to pay. It's like you knock 20-30% off, off the top. But when you're a REIT, you can sell your properties that you think aren't right, and there's zero CGT. You carry on, you reinvest that equity and that capital into new properties. So that was a big attraction for us. Plus, if you structure yourself properly, you're only paying tax right at the end, And
so tell me, investing in direct property for the public, for people that want to go buy commercial buildings, and I hear you saying now, rather go buy into listed sector because of the tax efficiency and the basically,
Well, listen, I think first of all, as an individual, I mean, the great thing about properties is gearing, is leverage. You can get banks.
Seventh wonder of the world.
Yeah, especially if there's growth. So if you've got very little of your own money,
Compound interest, yeah.
but you can find a little bit, to put down, you can borrow and you can convince the banks to lend you the rest. You're going to get the growth on their money. Obviously, if it goes the other way, you're going to get the negative growth on their money, which will kill you. But I mean, if you done your homework and you can grow your income and your value of your property, that's just amazing. So you can't really do that if you're investing into listed as an entrepreneur. Great to invest in listed as part of your defensive part of your portfolio. If you're a professional and you don't have time to run a property portfolio, it's the most wonderful way to build up a property portfolio is buying listed, because it's pretty well managed and the income is fairly sure. Obviously, it went through, it's COVID. Obviously, was a kind of like a black swan event. But generally, listeds manage to grow their income every year, and they manage their debt well. So it's a great place for an investor who's not a full-time property investor. But if you're a young entrepreneur, buy your own property. Sure, use gearing at the max, work those properties, and you can get the growth on the bank's money. Or if you can convince investors to come in on a syndication, you can possibly get a free carry and get the growth on their money. And that's been the history across the world of great property entrepreneurs, using banks' money and using investors' money, where they are, the property entrepreneur is the general partner.
I was going to say, at the end of the show, I was going to ask you a question. What would you give advice to young entrepreneurs and 30-year-olds? I think the 101 business strategy in property, I think you've just given it to them.
Yeah.
But you mentioned a hotel. I mean, I understand. Remember, you bought the hotel at the Doubletree. You sold it, and you bought it back again. So, I mean, you like the hotel business. I mean, how come you turned it around and made it work, and people that were in the hotel business didn't make it work? I mean, it's a phenomenal story.
Yeah, so I suppose it's a matter of luck and timing, and I've been very, very lucky. I've kind of timed things quite nicely. We were right back in the old days when we owned Seaf in '96. We managed to sell that business before interest rates went to ridiculous numbers and the value collapsed to nothing. But with the hotel, we developed it as part of a big mixed use scheme back in the old Spearhead days, and we sold it before I'd even done a deal with Redefine. We sold the hotel with a 20-year lease, triple net lease, from a listed hotel company. It was listed on the JSE. Sold it to Redefine, made a nice profit as the developer. I think we sold it for 250 million rand to Redefine, that Doubletree by Hilton. Cost us, say, 200 to construct, and made a nice margin. And within a month of Redefine taking transfer of the property, this hotel company had gone bankrupt on the JSE. It was unbelievable. They'd obviously just taken on too much exposure, and they'd gone bankrupt. I can't even remember the name of it, but it wasn't obviously as big as the Sun Internationals of the world. And then Redefine ended up having to run it itself, at a loss. I think Wolfie thought he was the hotel expert and was going to run it, and brought in a great team. But the reality was, it was 2010, and it's hard to get a profit out of a hotel in the first year or two. And by the time I left Redefine in 2011, they said, just take this thing back. I bought it back from Mark for 70 million.
Oh, my goodness.
So it sold it for 250. And in fact, in his book, he says this is his worst ever property deal he'd ever done. So I bought it back at 70. And that was 2011. And we ended up going into the Spear listing at about 250 million, where its value was back in 2006.
And it's doing well today.
Well, and then it obviously had a terrible time during COVID.
Yeah. I mean, everyone in that industry.
And hotels were empty. And then Quentin Rossi, who had handed over the reins of Spear, decided he wanted to sell the hotel. There were a couple of hotels in the portfolio. And even though I was a related party, I decided I would listen. I was going to put in an offer, together with other people, and I put in the best offer. I bought the hotel out from Spear, where I'm still on the director, and a big shareholder. But I thought, instead of somebody else hopping up the hotel, I would take it. I had to put a couple of investors together. We bought it back for about 110 million. And remember, it was basically losing money back in 20.
No. There were lots of
22,
hotels
2000.
on the market and for sale. People were giving hotels away.
But, COVID didn't last forever. And now this hotel's pumping again. And it's, making 30-odd million rand a year in net income. So I suppose you could say the valuation's well over 300 million now in today's terms.
Incredible. Yeah. But hotel, basically service, residential. Have you ever thought of getting involved in the student accommodation or the residential market, or are you involved somewhere indirectly? I think you are involved.
I've always been involved in the resi developers. I've kind of been an opportunistic developer, or I've joined other developers and taken a stake in their developments.
I think you developed the Bantry Hills.
Yes. So
but that was to sell. To sell.
So I've been involved, as I say, in the luxury end of apartments, but outside of generally outside of the listed companies I've been involved in. Bantry Hills was one of them. Wembley Square, together with Mike Vietri of Faircape.
That's the address now. I think in Atlantic City was one of the addresses.
Bantry's great. In fact, I live there now as well. But a whole variety of different developments, and I've backed other developers. Block, who are very active in the Cape Town market. They put up generally 10-story apartment blocks.
And what's your view on developed to rent? Those like how they have overseas in America. Where they have the residential ownership,
the multifamily companies
where you rent the properties out. You don't sell them out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in South Africa, there's issues with that. The SARS aren't allowing the companies to deduct their costs, their VAT cost of construction. And it's America, they've got the legislation that allows these multifamily to recover those kind of tax costs. South Africa is not quite as efficient, but there are a number of multifamily companies, mainly in the Johannesburg area, where they've got inner city units. In Cape Town, it's a bit more difficult. The prices are higher. You're not quite getting the yields. If you're off, historically, you've been lucky to get 4 or 5% residential yields on buying apartments or building apartment blocks. It's been slightly different in the last, say, 4 or 5 years with the advent of short-term letting and utilizing Airbnb and booking.
Especially in the student accommodation sector.
So student accommodation
southern suburbs have gone crazy.
Oh yeah. So look, student accommodation is also again a very specialized game. I never got involved. It's I think it's for the specialists. You got to know how to
management team you have to have on board.
Yeah, you got to have. I think it's a great place for entrepreneurs, but it is very special. Not to say that residential isn't specialized and commercial isn't specialized and retail, but I've never, you can only, I suppose, be good at a few things. And student accommodation, I've kind of left that for those specialists, and things like storage, left it for those specialists, because you got to. I think those industries. Student and storage, you've got to be dedicated in that industry.
So out of those, you mentioned all the different sectors. You've got a bit of retail. Spear's done unbelievably well. Your focus is Cape Town, but your focus is not a sector like some of your other listed funds like Equitas and Age, only big industrial logistics. Your focus is demographic, and it's the Cape region. But which would you prefer out of those sectors? Where's your heart? Is it industrial, retail, or
I can't say our heart's in any one specific sector. You got to understand, when you're a regional specialist, you have to get diversification through property type. But you can't do everything, as I said. But so we've kind of in Spear have now honed it back down to office, retail, and industrial. Although industrial is still a little bit overweight and office is slightly overweight, and we're trying to increase our retail exposure within the Spear portfolio to get a balance. So we're focusing on those three areas. Sure, there are other property types as well, whether it's medical property or old age care centres that could theoretically be part of the mix, but the focus is on those three core areas: office, industrial, and retail. And I can't say I'm either one of those sectors are my favorite, but from time to time, in different times of the property cycle, they each do well. Sure, office generally is a laggard over a long period of time because of the costs of re-tenanting and putting in installations. So office can be difficult, but there are, in the last couple of years, been a great time to get into office because it was so hammered by by COVID, you could buy cheaply. In fact, probably still now, there's some great buying opportunities in office if you're confident, and you'll be able to get those growth in rentals over the next few years. Industrial may well have run its hard run already. I just can't see the same kind of levels of growth coming in industrial and warehousing over the next few years. Retail's been resized through COVID. The rentals have been set down at new kind of levels, and I think there's some nice growth going forward in retail. But it's a semi-specialist kind of area, and you can be knocked out by a competitor, and if you aren't dominant enough. So you've got to be careful with what you buy and how you manage.
So your team's doing an unbelievable job. I mean, across the market, everyone's talking about Spear. I mean, you're not a massive REIT at the moment, but you are, I think you're 6-7 billion around there.
Yeah.
But you soon to, I'm sure, grow even more with some of the bigger institutions trying to take a stake in you. So
no shortage of cash wanting to come in right now. But the problem is, you got to do deals that actually are accretive. If as a REIT manager, you don't do deals just for the growth for growth's sake. Because sometimes you just take on problems, and in fact, you might go backwards from a distribution per share. Biggest focus has always been grow that distribution, that dividend for shareholders. Just grow it every year. And to do that, you need to buy properties at a yield that is higher than your weighted average cost of capital. And your weighted average cost of capital is made up of...
I think you did a deal with Mira at around 9% or 9.5%.
Yeah, so that was actually accretive, and it was a lekker deal, and we bought in, and at the time no one really wanted to touch offices, but those offices have, in Cape Town now your occupancies are 100%.
Yeah.
Rentals are starting to run, so it's been proven to be a good deal, a great deal, and it's adding to the bottom line.
Portside, I think when the deal was done originally to now, to the growth from the original deal, the sale of that 50% share of the port, I mean, I think it's almost doubled. I know it's gone up more than 50% in the rentals that they were achieved. Maybe a bit of bad management, maybe a bit of hands-on. But
Penny's taken quite an active role there, and I think is moving a lot of what she would have deemed to be undesirable type tenants, like these call centers, out of there, and putting more your A-grade professional firms at a much higher rental. So they may have been at, let's say, 200 odd rand a square meter. When you get rid of these people, it improves the quality of your building because you're not having thousands of call center workers coming up and down the lifts. And now you've got, your professional who prepare to pay 350 up to 400 rand a square meter. And suddenly you're getting real growth in your net income.
And a lot of international companies want to be in Cape Town as the head office. And for them, in dollar terms or euro terms, it's cheap.
Yeah, it's still cheap. These kind of levels. I mean, residential rentals are in the city and the Atlantic seaboard are probably pushing 500 rand a square meter. So office, which is probably a more expensive fit out and everything, your rentals should theoretically get there. It's still the cheapest rentals in Africa is South Africa. Cheaper than Harare, cheaper than Windhoek. So there's opportunity, and the replacement cost, as you know, is not cheap for building new offices. 40,000-50,000.
And there's only so much land in the Cape Town city,
Yeah, there's only so much land, and building costs are building costs, whether you're in Joburg or Cape Town. If you want new offices, you want someone to build them for you. You got to give them the right kind of return yield, at least covering their cost of finance. So that's why I think there's built-in rental pressure just through building cost inflation
and you're exploring George now. I see you've got that development land there in George. Across the road from the airport. And I mean, that must be something. I mean, you weren't really in development, but now
the reality is Spear. I mean, we've always had a sort of development on the go. We're obviously not huge developers, but there's always putting up a warehouse or upgrading an office building or maybe putting up a small shopping center. Always something going on. So George is a development. It's some great land we managed to get involved in opposite next to the airport for industrial and semi-retail use. And it's under development. Yeah, so Spear is a Western Cape. That's the mandate. George is kind of at the...
Southern Cape.
At the border, very much at the border of the Eastern Cape.
Golfing mecca of the world.
And it's showing fantastic growth. I mean, similar to, let's say, a lot of those Western Cape towns, George is right up there in terms of growth. And I think it's gonna be great for the future in terms of where property prices are going to grow at.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, and then, I mean, obviously there's this whole stage now, everything's settled and you've got a great team running the business. You are now the chairman and different things, including King David Golf Club, and you're involved. I mean, the future for you, I mean, you're taking a bit more laid back approach now towards the property. How, I mean, what are your plans? I mean, you're only 61, but you're a young 61. I mean, I think when Mark was 60, he was smoking 2-3 packets of cigarettes a day. He didn't look like you looking in the shape that you looking. He wasn't playing 18 holes of golf often, you know. So, you know, 61 today is different to many years ago. So, what are your plans? And I'm sure not to stop or slow down.
No. Listen, I mean, there's no plans to ever stop. But the great thing for me, you know, the great thing is to be able to be in charge of my own time. I don't have to rock up at work at any specific time. If I want to go for a cycle in the morning and spend a bit of coffee time with the boys, I can, you know, do that till 10, 11 in the morning. And that to me is, you know, is really fantastic. It lowers the blood pressure and there's no rush to have to get off anywhere. But yeah, I've always wanted to be involved in community issues and helping out with, you know, with charities that make a difference. So yeah, so I keep myself quite busy. Currently, chairman of the Katie Mowbray Golf Club and dealing with issues there. And
talk us about them, because I mean, obviously the city has done a lot of good for the property or entrepreneur and the businessman or just the people that live in the Cape. So, but there's a big fight now on with Katie. And I remember we were the sale of the King David Golf Club because it was just in the wrong position, suitable for what has been used today. Unfortunately, it lost a great golf course, possibly one of the best golf courses in the Western Cape. But it had seen its time, and the area around it obviously lent itself to be redeveloped for something else. And I think you orchestrated an unbelievable deal there for King David and for the golf club. And now you're at Mowbray, and you're starting to have a different challenge.
Yeah. So as you say, it was a fantastic deal at the time. Sold to Atterbury Mutual. We're redeveloping it, and most of the money is going to charity and looking after underprivileged golfers and that kind of stuff. But a portion of it was for the merger with Mowbray, and that merger has gone really well, and the whole club has been upgraded. The course has been upgraded. The clubhouse.
You've even got a waiting list, I think, to get into the golf club.
So there's
that was never the situation.
Yeah, so it's the first time we've got a waiting list, over 1,000 members now, which is, you know, at maximum. And yeah, the city decided whether the mayor decided he was going to appease some left-wing organizations. You said, how can you have two golf courses so close to each other? You got Rondebosch on the one side of the highway, and you got Mowbray on the other side. And he said, we've got to get rid of one. And so we started that fight. You know, they wanted, and it's leasehold land. I mean, city owned the land. So we just signed a new 10-year lease with them, and we've had a political fight and a negotiation. And I think the city's now got to a point where they realize it was probably a mistake to take on the KD Mowbray Golf Club. There's huge support for it amongst the residents of the area of Pinelands. A lot of important, I would say, a lot of important benefactors to the DA and the city are members at the club, and you don't want to piss off your constituency like that. I think they've realized it, and so they've backed off.
But they've got lots of land that they're busy selling anyway. Lots of land.
Oh, correct. No, there's lots of other options. And to take the most beautiful piece of land that's a green lung for the area and for the city. I mean, it's part of, when you drive in from the airport to Cape Town, you see, it's a welcome. It's a beautiful welcome as you come in. You've got these green lungs on either side. You've got the mountain in front of you. For people driving, commuters driving in to see this, it's just fantastic. Plus, it serves an important part of the
community.
Well, that and ecologically, it handles all the stormwater from the flooding. Half of it is under the 50-year flood line, so it's right next to the main river systems, the Black River and the Lisbeek, and it's an important part of handling stormwater. So it's not just there. It's not just there as a pretty face. It's there as part of the stormwater system. And it's also a fantastic community asset because it's the headquarters of South African Disabled Golf. Golf development are there. Youngsters underprivileged. It serves massive constituencies. It's not just a rich man's sport at all. It's we managed to democratize the sport over there with people who can't really afford it.
So hopefully common sense prevails and they do the right thing, and then they back off. And
So that's that's the expectation and the hope. And we're continuing to invest in the club, upgrading and investing in a relationship with the city and the mayor. And we think over time this will just go away.
But that city, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people that have basically moved from Johannesburg to there and semi-grated, what do you want to call it, but they're happy. They said that it works. The city of Cape Town really works, whereas Joburg, we got our challenges. I live here, I love it here, but every single month there's more challenges, so, but in saying that, the sentiment and right now, for the first time in many years, is very good. So hopefully, possibly there'll be a change of guard. And there'll be some new ideas.
But no doubt, you can't keep a place like Ugali down. It's going to have its rise soon again. Just driving around this morning, less stressful driving in the traffic in Joburg than it is in Cape Town. The traffic has become a stressful issue. It's just, I must say, lovely driving around in Johannesburg. Traffic isn't as bad, and it's a hell of a lot nicer than anyone would have said. And I think there's going to be a rejuvenation for Johannesburg. It's you can't hold it down.
Absolutely, I'm on the same page. Do you think that Cape Town's maximized? Do you think it's like fully priced at the moment? Do you think there's not much growth, or do you still think that there's growth there in the Cape?
I think there's growth. The amazing thing is that it's got to this point with hardly any foreign investment, and that foreigners are now starting to buy in the Western Cape. So foreigners haven't really touched the commercial property market. Now they're coming in, they're buying into the resi market, pushing up prices to levels that we hadn't seen for ever, 200,000 rand a square meter kind of levels in parts of the Atlantic seaboard, which is still cheap in world terms, but South African terms is high, and it's going to drag up the rest of the Western Cape. We've seen, parts of Paarl and Stellenbosch where huge demand, is pushing up prices. Southern suburbs, you can't find a second-hand house. You go onto a waiting list, it gets sold before it gets listed at the moment. So I think there's still ongoing upside from, not just from, let's say, your semigrants, which has probably come to an end now. I think those who've probably wanted to semigrate have probably done it. So I think there's now foreign demand, and a lot of it is for holiday houses and things like that, and it's helping drive demand, and I think it's going to continue even with the stronger rand. Funny enough, I think that kind of gives confidence to your foreign investor that the rand is actually not a Mickey Mouse currency anymore.
So talk about that. I mean, you've taken money offshore, you've invested offshore, with the listed sector. I think you've invested offshore. I mean, right now it's the rand strengthening. Anyone that's taken money offshore must be like saying, geez, that was a mistake. And our investments are not looking so good because the return is against the currency is not so good. But what is your view? I mean, should you have more offshore, more locally invested? I mean,
listen, my view,
where are the risks for everyone?
My view, once you have assets, you need to look at diversification. You have to diversify your investment base. You can't have it all in crypto or all in property. You've got to diversify across asset classes and I think geography. So, to have everything in South Africa or South African assets is probably a mistake. You need to be able to diversify, because there are times when, the US or the UK market will do better. And as long as you don't have all your eggs in one basket and you have a diversified portfolio, and that's something I learned, in my accounting years and financial management, diversify your portfolio, because, you just never know. And that's just part of diversification strategy, having investments in assets that don't happen to be in your own town. And there's an old saying, that Jew and his money should never live in the same country. You always want to have eggs in different baskets. That's my recommendation to anybody. Once you have assets, never put everything in the same asset. Never put it with the same investment manager. Never have it all in the same bank, because something can go wrong. Have a little bit of paranoia, not too much, but have a little bit.
So, I mean, us as South Africans have been robust. Our character is to survive and to make things work. I mean, if you take what we offer here in this country, I'm absolutely love South Africa, but no intention of ever leaving. I'm a patriot. I love this place. I mean, look at the quality of some of the property people, what they've done. I mean, you saw like the Century property, how they developed Waterfall. They won awards, international awards, as being the best developer in the world. Valdevi, Fancourt, they sit up there as a bit. We've got so much to offer, and it looks like we take the best of everything around the world. We come here and we do it even better, but we haven't seen development and growth in the last 10 years because of number of factors. Obviously, our country, the economy, everything that's been leading to a very difficult property cycle. I do believe we get it right, and I think the Cape have kind of got it right, definitely. And I do believe that the rest of the country will follow suit. We've got a lot to look forward to. I mean, your view on South Africa?
Looking positive now, Norm. It certainly is looking a lot more positive than it's looked for a while, and more than one or two financial savvy guys are saying that, that our growth rates going forward should outperform, the rest of the Western world. So things are looking a lot more positive. Maybe the political side might even come right, and who knows, we might even be able to reduce the amount of corruption in this country and wastage in our civil service, and that will really help growth rates. But all of a sudden, commodities prices are doing nicely, and that's helping us. That's helping the country, and investors are now coming here, and all of a sudden are looking. Very successful mining in Durban now just held in Cape Town, and a lot of American investors were around. So I think we're going to see a lot of different parts of the economy starting to maybe improve, and we're going to see growth rates in South Africa now that will probably outperform Europe, US, and parts of Asia.
And tell me, I have to ask you this because it's coming towards the end of our chat. Any regrets along the way? Any regrets? Any look backs and say, what, I should have, I shouldn't have? And normally, most people say there's the decisions that they didn't make.
No, thank God I don't have any regrets. And that's how I try to live my life, never look back. Even if you make a decision and it turned out not so great, you got to say, well, what did I learn from that? Maybe there were some positives that came out of that. Maybe it taught me how to be humble, or maybe it taught me to be a little bit more conservative, if there was a mistake, or maybe, now I've learned how to maybe deal with, family and my wife, and I've learned from that, from those mistakes. So I'd never say, no, I regret this or regret that. And, and I think if you can live like that, you'll be a lot happier.
You've had a successful journey, not only in property. You've been the president of the Young Presidents Organization, YPO. You're still very involved there. You've done a lot of things for the community. You've been going golf courses and designs. You've changed the landscape in Cape Town. You've been very involved in a lot of sectors and boards. You've sat on a lot of boards, and you've got a beautiful family with some wonderful children and successful boys. So congratulations to you, Mike. Last message for the 30-year-old that was in your shoes in the early 90s and starting to embark on the property sector. Last words to them, what they should be looking for and what they should be doing, a bit of advice. And because, you, after your story today, I'm overwhelmed of what you've shared with us, and it's been incredible, and I'm glad to be a part of it, a small part of it. Wow. I think the next book needs to be yours.
Thanks, Normie. But I think if anything for a 30-year-old, I think the reality is not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but I think most people want to take a little bit of risk early on and try and build something. So the younger you are, the earlier you can do it, where you don't have responsibilities. Get involved, take risk. If you fake it till you make it. And you can't leave it too late. Once you've got family commitments and all that type of thing, it becomes more difficult to go out on a limb and take those financial risks in life. So start as early as you can. Get involved in what you think is going to be is going to give you upside as soon as you can. Don't leave it too late.
So thank you, Mike. And unbelievable story. Your success and inspiration, and your demeanor and your calmness is everyone. You'll never know if you're under pressure or not, even on the golf course. You're a good man to beat on the golf course, and I wish you, and we wish you, at Broll, all the very success. And thank you again for appearing on our show. Wonderful chat, and we look forward to doing some business deals in the future. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. If you have a burning question or want to add your opinion on the things that are shaping our country right now, add them in the comments below. And if you'd like to participate in this series, drop us a WhatsApp on 087 700 8289 or use Broll Broadcast as a tag. We'll see you there soon. Thank you.